Hi, I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. This podcast of the People's Pharmacy is brought to you by Squatty Potty Toilet Stools. They create healthy toilet posture for fast, easy elimination. Learn more about toilet posture and health at squattypotty.com. That's SQUATTYPOTTY.com.
We men don't like to diet, but we do want to shed excess pounds. What's the solution to our dilemma? This is the People's Pharmacy with Terry and Joe Graydon.
How can men drop pounds and build strength? Is there a way to change eating patterns to improve health without feeling deprived? Our guest today says it's not as hard as you think.
A lot of guys may watch TV and see ads about low testosterone. The claims are tempting: more energy, improved mood, and a better sex drive. Who wouldn't want to sign up for such benefits? But is there a downside?
Coming up on the People's Pharmacy, find out how you can boost your testosterone without medication.
First, this news.
In the People's Pharmacy Health Headlines, basic research on a marine snail may offer new insights for reversing Alzheimer's disease. Until now, most neuroscientists believed that memories were associated with synapses, the connections between nerve cells. That's because the typical plaque associated with Alzheimer's disease disrupts synapses. Now, experiments conducted on sea snails show that memories are not lost when synapses are destroyed. In these experiments, the animals received mild electrical shocks to their tails. They remembered this unpleasant experience and secreted extra serotonin to make new synaptic connections. When the scientists removed the neurons from the snail and maintained them in a petri dish, the neurons continued to connect. Adding serotonin to the dish increased the rate of new synapse formation, but inhibiting protein synthesis prevented this development. In further experiments in the animals, the scientists were able to demonstrate that reestablishing synaptic connections appeared to bring the memories back into focus. The implication is that memories are not stored in the synapses, but rather in the nucleus of the cell. While it's still a giant leap from snails to mankind, reversing synapse destruction might help Alzheimer's patients reclaim their lost memories.
Scientists at the Scripps Research Institute in La Jolla, California, are unraveling the details of what resveratrol really does in mammals. It's been reported to help creatures live longer, run farther, and avoid obesity. But applying the findings from rodents to humans has been tricky. Resveratrol is known as a compound from red wine, but it's also found in cacao beans, knotweed, and other plants. The Scripps investigators discovered that resveratrol partners with an enzyme that connects tyrosine to RNA. This seems to be protective under stressful conditions. The combination of resveratrol and the enzyme enter the nucleus and stimulate DNA repair. This might eventually prove to have activity against cancer, as well as helping promote longevity.
The FDA has just approved a new drug for hard-to-treat melanoma. Opdivo is for those whose skin cancer has not responded to previous treatments, including Yervoy. Opdivo is a PD-1 blocking antibody, similar to Keytruda, another drug approved only a few months ago. This class of medications is a radical new approach to cancer treatment since it alerts the immune system to the presence of tumor cells. PD-1 stands for Programmed Death Receptor, a way that cancer cells escape notice by the immune system. The drug is expected to cost about $12,500 a month. Side effects include fatigue, itching, nausea, and diarrhea.
Women taking common medications to prevent osteoporosis may get an added benefit. Bisphosphonates such as Actonel, Boniva, Fosamax, and Zometa cut the risk of endometrial cancer in half in a long-term study that included more than 23,000 women. None of the women had cancer when the study began. Endometrial cancer is uncommon, affecting roughly 18 women in 10,000. Nevertheless, it's good news to learn that drugs that are taken so widely have an unexpected protective effect against cancer.
Add the Bourbon virus to the growing list of tick-borne infections. After the death of a man in Bourbon County, Kansas last summer, doctors scrambled to identify the virus that killed him. It's never been seen before in the United States, but it is apparently related to viruses found in Africa, Asia, and Eastern Europe. It's also somewhat similar to the Heartland virus identified in Missouri several years ago. That one is also transmitted by ticks. Symptoms include fatigue, fever, and loss of appetite. Bourbon virus can also cause muscle aches and pain and elevations in liver enzymes. Unlike most other diseases transmitted by ticks, the new infection cannot be treated with antibiotics.
Thomas Jefferson was probably the first American to use a pedometer. The new generations of fitness trackers that have followed that first mechanical instrument are far more sophisticated. In addition to counting steps, they can monitor heart rates, track sleep, and count calories. Some can send and receive data from a smartphone or a computer. These devices can connect people and encourage competition between friends and family members in maintaining a desirable level of activity. It might be just what some of us need to remind us of our resolution to take at least 10,000 steps a day. And that's the health news from the People's Pharmacy this week. Welcome to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. Did you enjoy the holidays? Have you resolved to lose weight and work out in 2015? What will make your resolutions more realistic this year?
Men don't like to diet, but they do want to lose the love handles and improve their fitness and their sex lives. If you've been wondering whether the low-T commercials might solve these problems, we have a completely different solution.
We're talking today with Dr. John LaPuma. He is board-certified in internal medicine, and he taught the first nutrition and cooking course for medical students in the United States. He has a new book out. It's called Refuel, and it aims to change how men think about what they eat.
Welcome to the People's Pharmacy, Dr. LaPuma.
Joe and Terry, great to be back with you.
Dr. LaPuma, would you please tell us about the personal story that started off this book, Refuel?
Terry, I myself, as you know, have struggled with weight for years and have developed a medical practice around it called Chef Clinic here in Santa Barbara. And when I went back and looked at my patient population, I found that about half of my patients were men, which is very unusual for a practice that focuses primarily on nutrition and especially long-term lifestyle management. And in going through the charts of my patients, which I do periodically just to try to understand their care better, and finding that half were men, I wanted to try to be clear with myself, as well as for future patients, why that was the case, what I was saying that appealed especially to men. And it turns out that men need a different kind of language and different sorts of messaging than women do. So by examining both my own health and those of the people who were seeking me out, I began to develop a program that moved towards specifically engineering a language and a plan and a program that might appeal directly to men, and it turns out that it does.
You also point out that men are more susceptible to metabolic syndrome. Why is metabolic syndrome? And I will ask you to explain what it is. What is metabolic syndrome? Why is it more prevalent in men? And is it really more dangerous in men?
Terry, it's all about location, isn't it? Metabolic syndrome, of course, is this elusively named, previously known as Syndrome X, agglomeration of high triglycerides, of a big waist size, of a low LDL, of a pre-diabetic blood sugar, that together predispose men and women to medical problems like heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and so on. But for men, because we store our fat in the belly around our organs, visceral fat or belly fat, internally, not the squishable, pinchable, spare tire kind of fat, which isn't bioactive, but instead on the inside, that fat acts really like an extra organ and produces hormones that are not in men's best interests. Women, too, produce this visceral fat, but men store fat at all really primarily around their waist. And women store it primarily in their thighs and butts and places that they wish they didn't store it, too. But nevertheless, for men, it becomes an extra organ. And that predisposes men to metabolic syndrome and quite a few other conditions.
Now, you mentioned hormones. What hormones would be stored in that belly fat?
It's not so much, Joe, that they're stored, but that the belly fat actually produces hormones, insulin-like growth hormone, for example. Insulin-like growth factor helps men, sadly, become more resistant to the effects of insulin in the body, so that you have lots of insulin floating around that makes you store fat instead of putting blood sugar into cells when you have too much of it. Belly fat in men converts differently than in women testosterone that their testes make into estrogen by the action of an enzyme called aromatase. And this testosterone to estrogen conversion, I think, is probably responsible for many of the medical problems that men experience, particularly in early middle age and early maturity as well.
You suggested that this belly fat hormone connection was aggravated by low-quality carbs, and that's something I hadn't seen before. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
You know, we used to think about low-quality carbs as simply empty calories, and of course we're talking about lots of soda and sugary drinks. One of the hashtags in our book is SSB suck, sugar sweet beverages suck. But it's actually something that aggravates not just men's moods, but in fact makes them hold on to fat even more. High sugar levels can often lead to this insulin resistance, and it's very easy for men to overconsume sugar, overconsume starch, and lead to greater storage of belly fat in this testosterone to estrogen conversion, which does lots of things that are not in men's best interests.
Such as?
Men get diabetes at a body mass index of 31 versus women at 33. Men get 3 times the fatal cardiac events of women before the age of 64 and twice as many before the age of 74. About half of men get cancer. Only a third of women get cancer, but the kind of cancer men get generally is even more aggressive and invasive than women, particularly colon and rectal, lung, and bronchial. I think this contributes to men's early mortality. Men die 5.2 years earlier than do women in this country, but that wasn't the case 100 years ago.
Now, you said something a little earlier that many of our listeners may have missed the significance of, and that has to do with the idea of converting testosterone to estrogen. And, you know, I think about all the commercials that I see on television today for low T, and the idea that, you know, all you need to do is go to your doctor and ask for a prescription for testosterone, and you can put it in your armpit, you can rub it on your skin. You know, this is going to make you feel better. It's going to help you with your sex life. It's going to give you a lot more energy. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, but aren't there any other ways, natural ways, to get your testosterone levels back to where they belong? And that's kind of the premise behind Refuel, is it not?
It is. This 24-day eating plan that I've constructed that is really part-time, 2 days a week for the thrust of it, is around boosting testosterone naturally, because even though 5% of men actually are what is medically known as being hypogonadal, but is now known as being low T, a condition that many pharmaceutical companies have contributed to creating. There is actually a natural way to do it, which doesn't risk injury to partners or children and doesn't result in the increase in heart attacks and stroke that we've seen in the big randomized controlled trials that have to be stopped early because of those injuries. So those mechanisms and those ways to do so are really at the core of a fuel. And they have to do with sleep. Testosterone is made at night and released before REM sleep. So that's why your levels are highest in the morning. Men who have less than 6 hours of sleep a night have testosterone levels that are 15% lower than men who have more than 6 hours and less than 9 hours. And we teach little tricks in the book, including not watching a blue light screen within 2 hours of bed, because that blue light screen on many electronic devices resets your melatonin production in your brain, which then doesn't allow you to get to sleep and have as high quality sleep as you should. And there are lots and lots of others. Drinking less alcohol, which we have people do for the first 17 days of the book, and then having a couple drinks a week for life, really, is important in raising testosterone naturally, because alcohol speeds the conversion of testosterone to estrogen in the body. Avoiding many of the plastics that we encounter, particularly those with numbers 3, 6, and 7, are important, because those plastics are actually estrogen-like chemicals and corrupt gender. In fact, convert male frogs into female ones. We have people avoid getting receipts that are sprayed with BPA, like you might get at a gas station or a supermarket, because BPA, that bisphenol A chemical, which I know your listeners are familiar with, can do the same thing, can increase the conversion of testosterone to estrogen and create a number of what are called anti-androgens and be, bluntly, gender bending. We want people to filter their water to take out a lot of the chemicals in the water supply, including some commonly used pesticides and herbicides and fungicides that are also estrogenic and therefore raise their estrogen level. We don't want people to eat low-fat. Men on low-fat diets have lower testosterone levels than men on normal fat diets or even high-fat diets. And while I don't recommend a high-fat diet, I do think that getting 30% of your calories, 35% of your calories if you count calories, and not being afraid of olive oil and avocado and macadamias and almonds and walnuts and nut oils generally, and even some saturated fat, I think is a smart thing to do for your testosterone level. And the reason that works is that the healthy fat converts or helps to transport the cholesterol that you make testosterone out of, if you're a man, into your Leydig cells, which are the cells in the testes that manufacture testosterone. That's why you need a little healthy fat for better testosterone levels.
You're listening to Dr. John LaPuma. He taught the first nutrition and cooking course for medical students in the United States. He's an internist and co-founder of the Chef MD video series. He's medical director of the Chef Clinic in Santa Barbara, California, and author of Chef MD's Big Book of Culinary Medicine. His latest book is Refuel, a 24-day eating plan to shed fat, boost testosterone, and pump up strength and stamina.
After the break, we'll find out how men can change the food they eat to boost their testosterone.
What foods need to be a regular part of a testosterone-friendly diet?
What is Dr. LaPuma's 2-day diet plan?
How easy is it to go low carb? Do you have to do it all the time?
What are the signs of low testosterone? How will you know you are making a real change by altering your eating plan?
You're listening to The People's Pharmacy with Joe and Terry Graydon. If you value the health information you get when you listen to The People's Pharmacy, consider subscribing to our email newsletter. You'll get the latest health news and information on upcoming podcasts delivered to your inbox twice a week. Look for the link at peoplespharmacy.com.
Welcome back to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. The People's Pharmacy is made possible in part by Squatty Potty Toilet Step Stools, creating healthy toilet posture for fast, easy elimination. More information about how toilet posture affects your health That's squattypotty.com.
And by Red X Industries, makers of utterly smooth creams and lotions that deeply moisturize to make dry skin feel soft and smooth. The number's 800-345-7339, online at uttercream.com.
If you'd like to order a CD of this show, you can call 800-732-2334. This is show number 975. That number again, 800-732-2334. Or find the show on our website, peoplespharmacy.com.
Today on the People's Pharmacy, we're talking about how to help men lose weight and regain a good hormone balance.
Our guest is Dr. John LaPuma, internist and medical director of the Chef Clinic in Santa Barbara, California. He taught the first nutrition and cooking course for medical students in this country, and he co-founded the Chef MD video series. His first book, Chef MD's Big Book of Culinary Medicine, was a New York Times bestseller. Today, we're talking about his recent book, Refuel, a 24-day eating plan to shed fat, boost testosterone, and pump up strength and stamina.
Dr. LaPuma, when you get a bunch of guys together watching a game, you know what they're going to have to eat and drink. There's going to be a six-pack or two of beer. There's going to be pizza. There are going to be pretzels. There's chips. I mean, it's all those carbs that you kind of frown on. How do you change a guy's behavior, especially when you got a bunch together having fun?
I don't think there's anything wrong with beer, Joe. I like beer. I think men should drink beer. And if they want, eat pretzels and chips as well. But I think you have to think about them as special treats. I think especially the highly processed carbs, because as we spoke about, highly processed starchy, sugary carbs actually make overweight men hungrier. And the gender-bending chemicals that are in the plastics for soda bottles don't help. So the way to do it, I think, is to create food that tastes just as good, that's just as easy, and is actually a little better for you to serve alongside and maybe even instead of those treats.
Give us some examples.
Well, an easy example is, in my book, the only guacamole you'll ever need. I mean, why doesn't guacamole have a place at the Super Bowl table?
Oh, it should.
I think it should. Absolutely it should. Because it's rich in those healthy fats that we spoke of. It has lots of antioxidants in it. It often has a little bit of tomato for the lycopene to protect your prostate. Guacamole ought to be on every man's party table for every football game. And
the recipe in your book sounds easy and delicious.
All these recipes are not only refined sugar-free and gluten-free, but most of them can be done in 30 minutes or less. These are 15 dishes every guy can make. And women like it because they get some help in the kitchen. I think part of being a modern man is not only being a healthy man, but a man who can take care of not only himself, but his family. And being able to know your way around a kitchen, not being intimidated by the stove or the refrigerator, is something that men can learn to do. But, we often focus on the nutrients and on nutrition, and I love nutrition, and it's a lot of fun. But the truth is that if there was one perfect diet, we would probably all be on it. And what seems to make the difference instead is, as I just mentioned, making it super easy. I think if you make behavior change super easy, as easy or easier than the unhealthy thing, then you have a shot at changing behavior for life.
Well, now, let's talk about guys and dieting, because I think most men, they'd like to lose a little weight, 5-10 pounds around the belly in particular, but they don't like diets. And so dieting, women, that's for women. Guys want different approaches. And so I think that one of the benefits of what you've been doing for so long as both a physician, an internist, as well as a chef, is you've been trying to come up with ways that make losing weight more, shall I say, palatable?
I love that idea. I think men don't like the idea of dieting because men don't like the idea of getting smaller. The language of dieting is kind of feminine. Eat less, exercise more. That's really something that doesn't resonate with a lot of men. Men need a language that speaks to them directly, and they like something that is really easy. And that's why we constructed the table of easiest steps. It turns out that most of behavior changes is about having a cue, having an action, and having a reward. So one of the rules in our book is to drink 3 liters of citrus water a day. That citrus water is filtered water. Citrus water is just adding a little bit of citrus juice with a sliced tangerine or a sliced orange. So you get the synephrine in the lining, you get the little vitamin C boost from the citrus, which helps you make growth hormone at night, and it tastes better. But 3 liters seems like a lot to people, and they're not quite prepared to do that. So what we do is say, listen, the first thing you do when you walk into the kitchen in the morning, because almost everybody does walk into the kitchen, is to take a glass out of the cabinet and drink half a cup of water. And when you have half a cup of that citrus water down, you say to yourself, I'm awesome. That's your reward. And so you have a cue, walking into the kitchen, something you do every time in the morning. You have an action, drinking half a glass, not 3 liters, half a glass of water, and you have a reward. So we do that for each of the things that are easiest to do, a dozen things in the program, because it turns out if you can do something small, like drink half a glass, then, well, the glass is 3/4 full, so you might as well drink the rest of the glass. So now you've got 3/4, you only plan to do half a cup, and you still get the reward. And this is true also for push-ups. We have guys who can't do a push-up who come in, or can only do 2. So we say the first thing in the morning, when you roll out of bed, next to the rug on the bed or in the hallway or wherever you have room, do 1 push-up. That's all you got to do all day. 1 push-up. If you can't do a push-up from your ankles, do it from your knees. It doesn't matter. Don't do the micro bend in the elbow, but do the real push-up. And once you have that push-up done, stand up, say, I'm awesome. Because the next day, you know what? You might do a full push-up or 2 push-ups or 5 or 10 or 20 or wherever it is that you're starting. But the point is, all you got to do is something that's easy, you succeed, and you get a reward.
All right, let's talk about easy. You say that your diet plan, your low-carb diet plan, is only 2 days a week. Does that make it easier?
It does, because it's easy to do something part-time. If guys know, listen, this is what I got to do 2 days a week. I have to hit 50 grams of carbs, and we give an extensive carb table in the book. We have a dozen meal plans. We have 40 snacks that are easy to assemble. If all you have to do is hit 50 grams a day for 2 days and drink the 3 liters of citrus water, and the rest of the week you follow 5 simple rules, including using a 6-inch plate for food at home without more food on the rim. It should be a 6-inch plate with a rim, but the rim is for decoration, not for food. Then, you know what? 50 grams a day, 2 days a week, that begins to sound doable. It's not diet, first 3 letters, die. It's, okay, I can do that. And the really interesting thing is that once guys start to succeed, they feel so much better and they begin to look better that they want to do the 50 grams a day every day. But I like them to do it just 2 days a week after that first phase of 3 days, because I want men to have a more normal life. I don't want them to crash at the church social or go overboard on a buffet or feel like they're being deprived or on a diet. They're not. This isn't a diet. It's a lifestyle plan that is really easy to do.
Dr. Lupumo, what does a menu plan for the day that includes 50 grams of carbohydrate actually look like? Example.
Well, let me give you one. In fact, breakfast, day 1, a breakfast quesadilla with corn tortilla, eggs, black bean salsa, and queso fresco with coffee, tea, or citrus water. For a snack, half an avocado with vinaigrette dressing. For lunch, you could have fish, seafood, or chicken kebabs with vegetables. a green salad with capers, crumbled blue cheese, and red onion, and then again coffee and tea. And for dinner, you could have my refuel beef stew, which is amazing and really super easy. It uses beef chuck, dried thyme, button mushrooms, red wine. I prefer Syrah or Merlot, but any wine that you like. A can of diced tomatoes. You can actually quadruple this recipe and have it for more meals during the rest of the week. It's really fantastic.
It does sound yummy. I am wondering, you say that men should focus on eating strong vegetables. What the heck is a strong vegetable and why are they important?
I like strong vegetables as cruciferous vegetables. Cruciferous vegetables, as you know, Terry, are any vegetables that, when you let them go, bloom in the shape of a four-pointed cross. And they're vegetables we all know: Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, even arugula, watercress. And these vegetables are powerful in two ways for men. One is that they reduce the conversion of testosterone to the estradiol. They convert the estradiol, which is a strong estrogen in your body that aromatase in the fat cells normally produces from testosterone, and make it a weaker estrogen. So it strengthens your ability to maintain your testosterone level. And the other thing that cruciferous vegetables do, as you know, is to act in the liver to help detoxify poisons that come into your system, either from high-temperature grilling or high-temperature roasting, as well as from pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides that are synthetic and chemical. So the best vegetables for men, in my opinion, are cruciferous. And we have a long list of them and lots of ways to prepare them, including my spicy teriyaki broccoli.
Well, speaking of spicy, you talk in your book about tarting up carbs. Now, I happen to like spicy foods, and I'm kind of curious. When you talk about tarting up carbs, what exactly are you referring to?
I love spicy too, Joe. And all that work at Topolobampo was not for nothing. And multiple chilies are in my kitchen. Tarting up carbs has to do with adding an acid. Anything citrus, wine, vinegar are common acids that are chef secrets for perking up flavor instead of adding salt or fat. And when you add them to a couscous or a bulgur or to a toasted bagel or even to a pasta or to rice, it actually lowers their glycemic index and glycemic load based on how much there is of that carb, and allows your blood sugar to rise more slowly and gently instead of spiking your insulin and then having it crash along with your blood sugar. So adding an acid to a refined carb like couscous or bulgur, or the ones I've just mentioned, is something that I think that men ought to do whenever they have that kind of treat that we spoke about, the starchy, sugary foods that make men hungrier and make overweight men want to eat more of them. And that can be, if you're having chips, then take 10 chips out of the bag, put the bag away, or preferably run water over it so that you don't want it anymore. And then scoop up that only guacamole you'll ever need that you've made extra citrusy by squeezing an entire lime over it. And that will help to slow the absorption of the blood sugar and inside that you're creating with the chip.
Now, the French are renowned for having their salads after their main meal. And I'm just wondering if that vinaigrette dressing that they're putting on the salad is also helping control blood sugar.
Might easily be part of a new French paradox. You know, it's very interesting you mentioned the French, because it's basically unknown in this country that testosterone levels have declined 25% in 35 years, and sperm count levels have declined 35% in 25 years. And that data is true both in American men and in French men and in Swedish men. This turns out to be a global phenomenon, which I think has been exported along with our standard American Western diet. And it's a powerful sort of silent crisis among men and in men's health that most people don't associate. In fact, a lot of people don't know that the obesity epidemic that we're experiencing now is actually an obesity epidemic in men. 15 years ago, the obesity rate in men was only 27%, and it was 35% in women in the United States. Now it's 35% each. And that's accelerated in men in both the United States and in Europe. And I read this morning that North Africa and that Latin America are catching up, as is the Middle East. There's now 60% of the populations of each of those continents are overweight or obese versus well over 70% in the United States. So this is a global phenomenon that we actually need to pay attention to as a culture. And it's not just American, it's also worldwide.
Dr. LaPuma, what are the side effects of low testosterone, and this obesity epidemic that has accelerated with men? I mean, what would be a tip-off that the hormones are out of balance?
Common symptoms of low testosterone are low libido, lack of initiative and assertiveness and drive, fatigue, a decreased sense of well-being and self-confidence, depressed, irritable mood, indecisiveness, less stamina, less endurance, less muscle mass and strength and tone, less sexual ability, and of course sleep apnea, which is surprisingly prevalent in men. And in fact, if you have a collar size over the collar size of 17, you should speak to your doctor about being tested for sleep apnea because it's increasingly prevalent.
So those are all of the symptoms of low testosterone and maybe too much estrogen. Are they reversible?
The magic is that, in fact, low testosterone symptoms are reversible if you get your testosterone level up. And there's a natural way to do that with diet and fitness and sleep and stress control, or there's a medication way to do that. The medication way, a lot of men find very appealing, and some doctors are quite interested in as well. And it has a good role for those who actually have measured low testosterone levels. But what we're finding is that the testosterone clinics that have been opening have a primary diagnosis of fatigue in a third of men without even levels measured. So I think if these symptoms are ones that you're experiencing, you owe it to yourself to check out the ways to reverse them on your own. And primarily, diet is the best, most efficient, fastest way to do it.
You're listening to Dr. John LaPuma, internist and author of Refuel, a 24-day eating plan to shed fat, boost testosterone, and pump up strength and stamina.
When we come back from the break, we'll find out whether weight loss can turbocharge your sex life.
Why are 50 grams of carbs the magic number?
We'll also find out how women can help their men eat right and live healthy.
You're listening to The People's Pharmacy with Joe and Terry Graydon.
If you like the information you hear when you listen to The People's Pharmacy, you may also enjoy our book published by National Geographic. It's The People's Pharmacy Quick and Handy Home Remedies, available online at peoplespharmacy.com or at your favorite bookstore. Welcome back to The People's Pharmacy. I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. The People's Pharmacy is brought to you in part by Squatty Potty Toilet Step Stools, creating healthy toilet posture for fast, easy elimination. More information about how toilet posture affects your health at squattypotty.com.
And by Redix Industries, makers of utterly smooth foot cream with shea butter, helping dry, cracked feet feel soft and smooth. The number's 800-345-7339, online at uttercream.com.
If you'd like to order a CD of today's show or any other People's Pharmacy broadcast, you can call 800-732-2334. Today's show is number 975. That number again, 800-732-2334. You can also place the order on our website, peoplespharmacy.com.
Today we're talking about how to overcome low testosterone without getting hooked on taking hormones. Our guest expert is Dr. John LaPuma, Medical Director of the Chef Clinic in Santa Barbara, California. He's taught medical students about cooking and nutrition and shared those insights in his first book, Chef MD's Big Book of Culinary Medicine. Today, we're talking about his recent book, Refuel, a 24-day eating plan to shed fat, boost testosterone, and pump up strength and stamina.
Dr. LaPuma, can testosterone levels really be boosted without medications? And if a man were taking testosterone, should he also be following your program?
Terry, absolutely testosterone levels can be boosted naturally. In our own research, which we presented at Stanford at the Medicine X conference and at South by Southwest, we found that men had 57% of men actually had improved erectile function after this 24-day program. 62% were able to lose 10 pounds or more. 75% increased their muscle mass, and 75% also improved their sleep quality and duration. And these kinds of improvements in reducing estrogen and raising testosterone all come about because men start to feel better by losing some of the visceral fat that acts basically as an estrogen factory inside of their bellies.
Now, Dr. LaPuma, we are talking to you from Durham, North Carolina. That's where our studios are located, and Durham has been known over the years as the city of medicine, as Fat City, because we have had a number of very renowned, we'll call them successful weight loss programs based out of Duke University and the surrounding area. And there's sort of this rumor that's been going around in Durham for decades that when people come here and lose, in some cases, 50 to 100 pounds, in some cases even more, that at the end of the program, they are very sexually active. That is to say, they get their sex lives back and they're turbocharged. Is there any science behind that?
Gosh, I really want to move there, Joe. I had no idea. I think there is a lot of science behind it, and it doesn't really surprise me. The thing is that when you start to look better, you begin to feel better, and your self-confidence goes up, your esteem goes up, you begin to feel more like your younger self. I had a negative comment from Amazon just recently on the book. It read, "I'm not sure I want to look like any of the guys in your book," because all of my guys are real guys. We didn't Photoshop any of the photos. They're men that were recommended from their doctors, or answered a flyer online, or we answered a flyer from Taco Bell or Burger King where we posted the flyers for the research study. And I replied to this fellow, listen, we didn't choose our research subjects because they were models. We chose them because they were overweight and they were interested in a natural approach to regaining their energy, strength, stamina, and supercharging sex. And their girlfriends, wives, and female coworkers all think they're pretty hot. And they are, because they were able to build the self-esteem, build their muscle strength, raise their stamina, and feel better about themselves. And there's really nothing sexier than confidence and the belief in yourself that you are able to take care of yourself and that you are, in fact, a modern man. And I think those folks in Duke, more power to them, that they have more sex and are enjoying it more. That's one of the benefits of the program that people most care about. And I just think it's great. It's a great part of life, and more power to them.
Can you tell us about one of the guys in your book? I really like the fact that you have these individuals who are obviously real people and who've had success with your program.
One of our guys is Joe, who is, I'm telling you about because he shares our own personal interest in food and wine. He is a member of gourmet societies that I can only dream being part of. has fantastic wine collection, is a terrific cook himself, and had been a very successful executive who put on weight like nobody's business because he was worried about his business. He was in his business all the time. And he came to me after he'd lost 50 or 60 pounds. And I said, listen, you don't really need this. You're doing great on your own. And he said, no, I really want to try it. And he actually knocked the ball out of the park because he had permission and a place to indulge his palate and his love of food and wine on weekends especially. He compartmentalized it so that he had a place and time for being able to have this fantastic experience, which he often traveled for around food and wine. And then he got back to his 50 grams of carbs 2 days a week. He got back to his 3 liters of citrus water daily. He got back to not eating food that he could crumple or crush, another one of the rules for the week. And he got back to using a 6-inch plate for food at home, 6-inch plate with the rim for decoration instead of more food. And that kind of easy structure for him allowed him to have a normal life, to indulge his way of cooking and of, in a way, saving his manhood. So he could have the kind of life that he loved to have but was missing without the Surf Fuel program.
Now, you mentioned two things that you've talked about before. One is this notion of the 50 carbs. I don't think a lot of our listeners understand why there's something magical about 50. I mean, what does the average guy consume in the way of carbs during the course of a typical day?
The average guy probably consumes about 350 grams of carbs a day. And so what this means is that you eat primarily protein and healthy fats and have green vegetables and fruit daily, but not at the center of the plate. For example, the cauliflower popcorn in my book, which takes 18 minutes, is 75 calories, and is low sodium, has only about 10 grams of carb per serving. The roast chicken with lemon and garlic juices has 24 grams of protein, 7 grams of fat. The pan-seared mahi-mahi with red cabbage takes 26 minutes, 23 grams of protein, has about 5 grams of carbs. The magic of 50 grams of carbs is technical, but I'll try to sum it up. If you have less than 50 grams in carbs a day, your body kicks over to a state called ketosis, where you feel like eating less, and it starts to burn fat for fuel. At the end of about 36 hours, 24 to 36 hours, that's about where you get to that place. And that's why we made it 50 grams of carbs for 2 days a week. Because when you go back to, say, 150 or 200, which really just means not drinking soda, drinking a lot less beer if you happen to drink beer, and not eating anything you can crumple or crush, which is my moniker for something that's ultra-processed. When you go back to your normal diet 5 days a week on that 6-inch plate with a rim at home, but eating out normally, and of course we have a whole menu decoder for eating out and big long chapter on how to decode a menu, then your body escapes ketosis and you metabolize normally. But you have that 2-day boost of feeling a lot better, a lot lighter. You step on the scale after 2 days, you probably lost 3 pounds. Now you'll put some of that back because some of it was water, but you have the easiest way to get into those habits again, should you want to during the week. And then, of course, the following week, you'll do it again for 2 days.
Just for comparison, if somebody were to have a beer or two and 3 slices of pizza, how much carb would they be consuming?
That depends on the maker and the beer, of course. But a slice of pizza is mostly carbs unless you make it yourself. And I would say it probably has 20 grams of carbs a serving, depending on the slice, more or less, give or take 10. But instead of having that, you can have my roast chicken with lemon and garlic juices. You could have my grilled sirloin steak and asparagus. If you wanted a dessert, you could have my coconut rice pudding with bourbon and toasted pecans.
Dr. Lupuma, as you've pointed out, the details of nutrition can be complex, they can be complicated, they can be a little confusing. And so I'd like you to review, please, the 5 commandments for getting it up and dropping the gut, the 5 refuel commandments, because they're pretty simple, and we've already been talking about a few of them.
That's right. Well, the first commandment is to not eat anything you can crumple or crush.
And
what does that mean?
If you take a hamburger bun from a fast food restaurant and hold it in your hand, you can make a spit wad out of it. And you shouldn't be able to. Bread is something that ought to be dense and a meal in itself. It means that bread's been super processed. The same thing with pretzels, with tortilla chips, with potato chips, with almost any kind of pastry. You're stronger than that if you're a man. You don't need to eat things you can crumple or crush. You need to eat things that are strong in themselves and offer a little bit of resistance. And you can do better. Not only that, starchy and sugary carbs make overweight men hungrier, and that's not something anybody needs.
Okay, number 2.
Number 2 is to drink 3 liters of citrus water daily. I've already discussed why, but briefly, citrus makes the water taste good. The vitamin C in citrus improves growth hormone, and the synephrine in the lining of citrus increases your metabolism.
Okay, number 3.
Number 3 is to eat primarily undisguised lean protein and strong vegetables. Undisguised means not sauced, dressed, breaded, coated, battered, or otherwise masked. And the strong vegetables, as we've talked about, are cruciferous, and they improve immunity as well as decrease the estrogenicity of the estrogen that you are producing.
And number 4?
Use only a 6-inch plate for meals at home. And this by itself will knock down your consumption by 20%. The plate looks full, and you probably won't even notice the difference.
And number 5?
Eat only small amounts of grains, starches, sweets, dried fruits, and full-fat dairy, and tart up your carbs. And this is, of course, because it changes the glycemic index of the refined carbs and improves your insulin response and sensitivity.
Dr. Lupuma, is there anything that women can do to help their men on this program?
Women are the secret weapon in refuel. Women are the secret weapon in most men's lives, period. They are the reason that men want to become healthy, but don't express it. Women, I think, who want to help a man ought to learn the language that men speak about going to the doctor or not going to the doctor. And what we did in the research is to ask men which phrases women gave that were really helpful and encouraging and which ones were not. And we learned a lot about how women should speak to men about their health and about food and how they could actually be helpful when men show an interest in getting healthy. I have a lot of friends who are women who really wish their guy would pay more attention to their health but don't know how to reach him. And so that was actually a really big part of our research, to try to understand what ways women could be helpful and still maintain their integrity in the home. And it turns out that if you give women the right phrases, they're enormously grateful and actually create change that improves the quality of their relationship and gives them a better, more energetic, more active relationship, which is a lot of what women want, it seems.
Well, I could use that help. Give me one phrase, please, that I can use for my wonderful guy, and then we'll wrap it up.
The phrase that seems to resonate most is, "I don't want to lose you." That's a powerful phrase when framed the right way in the right kind of conversation, affects men and makes them feel like they want to work for the whole, to work not just to get themselves healthy, get themselves feeling better, but want to take really good care of their wife or partner or girlfriend or sister or whomever and their family. Men found that phrase very helpful. And they also liked hearing the phrase, "You're looking great. That refuel is really working." those two phrases coupled together help men know that someone's watching, that their work is being appreciated. And everyone likes being told that they look great. But men who are trying to create a lifestyle change, who want to get a little healthier, who want to get stronger, want to have more sex, like hearing that they're doing well and there are girls on their side. So it's a wonderful, wonderful kind of journey to allow women into men's lives in this way. And men can learn a lot about it. And I hope that women will take advantage of this kind of insider knowledge that we've tried to document so that they can help men get healthy because they need it.
Dr. John LaPuma, thank you very much for talking with us on the People's Pharmacy today.
It's my privilege, Terry. Thank you for having me back.
You've been listening to Dr. John LaPuma. He taught the first nutrition and cooking course for medical students in the United States. He's an internist and co-founder of the Chef MD video series. He's medical director of the Chef Clinic in Santa Barbara, California, and author of Chef MD's Big Book of Culinary Medicine. His latest book is Refuel, a 24-day eating plan to shed fat, boost testosterone, and pump up strength and stamina.
And I'm so glad he shared with us those phrases that women can use to offer their partners encouragement and let them know they're really paying attention.
Those phrases again: I don't want to lose you, and you're looking great.
Lynn Siegel produced today's show. Al Wadarski engineers the program. Dave Creighton edits our interviews.
The People's Pharmacy is produced at the studios of North Carolina Public Radio, WUNC.
The People's Pharmacy theme music is by B.J. Liederman.
The People's Pharmacy is made possible by Redix Industries, makers of Utterly Smooth Extra Care 20 Cream with 20% urea for extra skin protection. The number's 800-345-7339, online at uttercream.com.
If you'd like to order a CD of today's show or any other People's Pharmacy broadcast, you can call 800-732-2334. Today's show is number 975. That number again, 800-732-2334. You can also order it online at peoplespharmacy.com.
When you visit our site, check out prescription drugs, herbal medicines, and home remedies. You can share your own experience and thoughts on today's show.
You could sign up for our free online newsletter or the free podcast of the show. You can even share it with a friend. It's all there at peoplespharmacy.com.
In Durham, North Carolina, I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. Thanks so much for listening, and please join us again next week.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. If so, please consider taking a minute to write a review on iTunes. And thanks for listening to The People's Pharmacy.